Hi, this is Tom DeWeese, President of the American Policy Center, and I want to welcome you to the third of our training webinars for local activists, how to fight back. These are building blocks, one step at a time. We're beginning to put pieces and parts together. What you can do on the local level, we are very, very aware of the individuals who have not fought and not quite sure how to get started, who will say, I'm only one person, what can I do? The whole purpose of these webinars is to bring you from that position into, as we're calling, now as our guest Mary Baker is saying, a citizen ninja, and what all that means, become a very fierce and very effective fighter. And I'm very happy to have back for our second time, Mary Baker, who has developed this entire plan on how to become a citizen ninja right there in your own community, how to fight back on the local level. And so Mary, I'm very pleased to have you back again. Welcome. And we want to start where we left off on number 2 and begin to move forward. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Tom. Yeah, such important discussions about this, and it does range far and wide. And I'm just glad you've invited me here to try to hone in a little bit on how to go about making a difference in your community and having that high impact we're looking for, where we can affect positive change. So we ended with key point number 2, which was how that power is a matter of influence, not coercion. And as hard as it is sometimes, we do need to use our power of self-restraint in certain situations. And in my book, I do talk a lot about that power of self-restraint, among others, like self-assertion, civic knowledge, and self-reliance. But key point, I'm going to share my PowerPoint here and continue. Our key point number 3 is to be an interested party. So we've been talking about the importance of engaging with our local government and local staff. And so this I need to drill it in a little bit more. We need to be an interested member of the community who cares and wants to contribute. That's how they need to see you. When they see you that way, they want to work with you. And depending on your approach, they want to dialogue with you, even if you disagree. And I promise you, this can happen because it's happened with me. But it's important that you be assertive, because the people, citizens, are being shut out of the process. Now, we've heard Tom speak many times about public-private partnerships and how they are wreaking havoc on self-government, which is the of, by, and for the people type of government that this country is founded on. And I redid this diagram. It's based off of a common diagram, actually, so that you can understand visually what I'm talking about and what Tom is talking about. And if you've ever attended one of his live conferences, he does this whole amazing theatrical demonstration to get the point across, because it is hard to understand. But public-private partnerships are 3 different silo groups who are now working together. And when these 3 silo groups work together, it means they're working towards the sustainable governance. And those 3 groups are businesses, government agencies, and what the United Nations calls civil society, because the United Nations understood that they needed to have civil society on their side. The NGOs, the non-governmental organizations, and the not-for-profit organizations, they knew they needed them to mobilize citizens, people, civil society, people who belong to civil society groups where they share an interest and are activated on whatever topic it is that they're activated on. But if you notice this public-private partnership construct where you have government agencies, businesses, and civil society, look at the group that doesn't get a circle. The people and communities, they don't get a circle, which means they are not included in the partnership. And this is why you need to make that happen. You need to be assertive and make it happen, because those NGOs are showing up and saying, well, I run a Sierra Club organization and we represent over 100,000 members in the state of California. And then you have, Linda, who gets up and says, hi, my name's Linda and I live on, Abbey Road, and I just represent myself. And this is what is happening. And that voice is getting drowned out. So to understand this is very important, and which is why I love this drawing that I have in my book. It is imperative that you find a seat at the table in these public-private partnerships, and that you be an interested party at the table. And they will find reasons why you shouldn't be at the table, but you need to take note. You can't take no for an answer. And the way that you work your way into the early decision-making table, which is where all these decisions are made before they come to the public, is to have a credible, professional relationship with the elected officials and the staff who are going to appoint you to these committees and to these boards and commissions. So I don't know how to make that clearer, but you have to have a seat at the table. A constitutional Republican form of democracy is a form of government in which the powers of sovereignty are vested in the people and are exercised by the people either directly or through representatives chosen by the people to whom those powers are specially delegated. Healthy governments stress the importance of state sovereignty, which is made up of citizens who are sovereign individuals, the rule of law, and self-government. Now, when I attended that new Partners for Smart Growth conference, there was a workshop leader who said, listen, folks, if you don't get involved and get at that early decision-making table, you are what's for dinner. Now, that is a shocking statement, but he was 100% correct. If you do not get yourself at that early decision-making table, you are what's for dinner. And only you can make that happen. And how do you make it happen? Direct action. A constitutional Republican form requires direct action by the citizenry. And when we're talking about opportunities, that's how I started off in the last session, talking about the different civic, electoral, political, and social opportunities that are out there for you in which you can engage. When you choose council, school boards, and county meetings, where all these shenanigans are going on, by not partnering with your public servants, you are excluding yourself from having an influence early on process. And the way to the early decision-making table is to be an interested party, an interested member of the community, and a citizen activist who pays attention to government business, who responds to community issues, who works to preserve self-government, and who stands up to power. Now that leads me to my key point number 4, which is you must engage in civil political discourse. Now let's dissect this a little bit and break it down into 2 parts. You've got rational civil political, well, let's take civil out for a minute. You've got rational political discourse, which is based on opinions, facts, and arguments, not fallacy arguments, but good arguments that stick to the point. And then you have relational discourse, which focuses on feelings, empathy, listening, and a genuine interest. Progressive messaging focuses almost entirely on relational approach to discourse versus a rational approach to discourse. Rational discourse, it's important to have an opinion and know your facts. Just don't lead with them. Don't argue. Be an influencer, not a controller. So in a rational argument, you need to decide, let me start over. In a situation, you need to discern what is going on. If you want to approach using rational, you're going to lead with opinions, facts, and arguments. If you're going to lead relational, then you lead with a personal story, for example, or talk about somebody who's had an experience. Don't lead with opinions, facts, and arguments. This is what I'm trying to get through to you. So you have to decide how it is that you're going to approach the situation that's going on or the person with whom you're talking. You want to keep the dialogue going, so you have to make decisions about the approach you're going to take. So I developed something called pegging, and pegging allows you to stage your discourse depending on your situation and depending on the person with whom you're speaking. Typically, people can be divided into 4 categories. They are either informed, like you, and share similar opinions about things. And when you run into someone like that, you can have deep conversations with them, and you may not all share the same information, and it's easy to go back and forth. The second type is an uninformed person who doesn't necessarily disagree with you. They're just uninformed and don't know all the facts. And when you talk to someone like that, you don't want to drown them with information. You want to trickle it out and point them to finding out more facts and to read more reports about it and so forth. The third type of person is a misinformed person. Now, this kind of person will react in 2 different ways. Basically, a misinformed person is misguided on their facts. So if you point out to them that they actually have their facts wrong, they'll either say, "Thank you so much. I didn't realize that. I've totally bought into the disinformation campaign, and now you've set my facts straight, and thank you so much." And then they can be moved into the uninformed category, or maybe even the informed category. The other way they'll react is to get really defensive and actually accuse you of being misinformed. That's why when you peg them this way and you listen to their language, which I'll talk about in a minute, you discern, okay, they are lean more left. So if I give them facts derived from a more conservative publication, they're not going to be accepting of those facts. But facts are facts, and they're often cherry picked. And so you can actually find facts that support your argument from a left-leaning publication. And if you quote that, then they'll be, wow, I didn't know, because they vetted that publication. They believe in what that publication says. And when you find the facts that support your argument from that publication, they will be much more inclined to listen to you and correct themselves. And then finally, the fourth person is a partisan person. And this is someone who is complete opposite from you. And in fact, just like it would be very, very difficult for someone to convince me to become a communist may feel very strongly that that is the only way, and they don't want to be their mind. They don't want to have their mind changed. And so I find it actually kind of a waste of time to talk with partisans. I mean, unless we're into having a really great debate where everyone's managing their emotions and not using fallacy arguments to, you know, to impugn somebody or to marginalize them in some way. I just find it a waste of time. And I think that if you can focus on the uninformed and the misinformed, you're making great progress. So it's important to stage your discourse. So let's see. The rational approach tends to be an audience that is informed or uninformed. So when you want to speak with a group like that, using opinions, facts, and good arguments works really well. If you decide, no, I think a relational approach is better, it's because your audience tends to be more misinformed or partisan. So these are just little mind tips that you need to have in your brain to make decisions. It's each situation and each person demands a different approach, and so you put yourself in the seat of power and more in control when you are making these determinations and you're thinking through, how am I going to stage this discourse? These are the things you want, because why, you are striving for high impact. So I recommend that you use your approach, and I go into this a lot more in my book. So when you actually find yourself in a meeting, a rational government agency meeting will allow robust debate in multiple public forums, multiple, not just one. They won't force consensus, and they care about the concerns of the citizens of their community. When you discern that approach, rational, then it's going to work for you to use opinions, facts, and, you know, good arguments to communicate. A relational government agency, however, will nudge or use bully tactics to seek predetermined outcome. And if they hire a facilitator, you can count on the following: manipulated language, warm and fuzzy terms, indirect language, and changing definitions. And just an example of manipulated language, and let's talk about, this is one of my favorite drawings, gun violence. Makes it sound like the gun is violent. Or how about lately the peaceful protests, right? They're not peaceful at all. And so they manipulate the language to lower your fear, basically, and to lull you. It's like a nudging technique, and they will change definitions in front of you. So you think you're talking about consensus that involves robust debate, when actually their definition of consensus is to nudge or bully you into a predetermined outcome that they are seeking. And so it's really important then to have a plan and use countermeasures to do things like ask questions. Don't assume you understand what they're talking about. If they say smart growth, you say, what does that term mean? And get them to define it for the group. And then it's all on the table about what it is they mean. You're asking for consensus. Can you please define consensus for the group so we understand what you mean by that? And it's incredible if you're dealing with a naughty facilitator whose goal is to nudge and bully you, you will really trip them up. They will not be ready for someone to say, can you please define that term for us? Anyway, so countermeasures: develop a personal story, ask for clarity. You know, you keep using that term. What do you mean by that? Speak the same language means listening to the culture of the language that's being used. Language is attached to culture. So if they are progressive, they're going to use a more progressive vocabulary. If they're conservative, they're going to use a more conservative vocabulary. That allows you to peg them and then to adapt and speak the same language so you can have discourse. Now, I get into this in the book, and it's a pretty deep dive, and I don't have time to do it here, but get the book or get me to come and train your group, and so that I can really get into what I mean by this. But what puts you in the seat of power is for you to control, to not control, but manage your situation and to stage your discourse so that you can be an influence. And part of the skill is to adapt to the situation. My final point is that it's time to engage. You need to make the choice for freedom. You need to use the resources that Tom has put together. You've taken the pledge many times. You've made the promise. There is no more important person than you in this fight to make a change. So become a citizen ninja, read my book. I cover a lot of different topics. My website is themarybaker.com, and I'm a coach. I'm here for you, and I'm just so honored to be supporting Tom in this great effort. So there you go, Tom.
All right, Mary, thank you very much. And let me go over a couple of things that you said here. We're talking about public-private partnerships. Take a good look right now at what is happening under the COVID lockdown, where Walmart, Target, all of these global corporations are allowed to be open, but mom and pop are not. And people keep asking the rational question, why is that? Why is that the case? That's because under a public-private partnership, these corporations, global corporations, are in partnership with your government. They get to help make the rules. They get to go to the head of the class to get all of the goodies. They get tax breaks. They get the decisions where they can put their business over some local business. And this goes back to what I was talking about freedom pods, because when this is happening, first, they can help use the public-private partnerships. These global corporations can help use the government to put their competition out of business. We're seeing that in stark reality with the COVID lockdown. And the government, this is the other thing you're going to witness very clearly now. The government gets to hide behind the independence of the companies, and they the companies will use their advertising budget to promote the policies that the government wants instituted. And so it all just becomes part of the landscape. This is how public-private partnerships operate, and this is one of the reasons why it is becoming so difficult for a local business to begin in a community. Who have to pay the taxes, the rules and regulations that the global corporations have put in place in their partnership. All of this fits together, and I don't think we have had a more clear example of this than we have right now with what we're witnessing with the COVID lockdown. And so take a good look at that public-private partnerships, you cannot have a partnership between government and business. The purpose of business is to protect, the purpose of government is to protect the businesses and their ability to operate and compete, not be in partnership with them. And when there are right-wing organizations that are advocating that public-private partnerships are free enterprise. And I have had great debates with these people that, that is just absolutely not true. What they try to tell us is that the in certain cases, a public-private partnership, then the business comes in, and when it's involved in the government, then we're keeping down the cost of government because business is involved. Absolutely not true. That's not how it's working, and you're seeing it in spades now with the COVID lockdown. And is it fair or isn't it? And if it's not working in that situation, it's not working in an everyday situation as well. So, you know, and what we find, the prime example of public-private partnerships is Mussolini fascism, and you know, we all know how that ended.
Yeah, I mean, they make the decisions. I went to a 100% renewable energy forum that was organized by civil society NGO. The panel were mayors who had implemented a CAP, action plan, and the people invited in the audience were businesses that were manufacturing, you know, climate change products. That was it. That's your public-private partnership right there. They were basically discussing how to support one another, and then they were going to go back and promote that in the town. I mean, it was unbelievable. I just saw it right then and there.
That's the way they operate, and it's all about kingmakers, all about who's in control, and these global corporations that I believe are moving very rapidly to not being free enterprise. They don't want competition. They want all the rules and regulations to be in their corner, and that's what makes it so very, very difficult to try to compete to them. You know, Walmart is infamous for coming into a town and putting the local hardware store out of business. You know, maybe even now they're going into the grocery business and so on and so forth. And so, you know, this is what they do, and they believe me. You're talking about getting in there and talking to your local city councilman and having them listen to you and so forth. That's the first thing they do. They are experts at it, and they've got multi-million dollars to put the very best people in there to be putting their arm around your local officials and so forth. And they know exactly how to play that game. And this is what we're up against. And I think people need to understand that is what we are up against as we try to do this. And so, you know, you've got to know your enemy before you can.
Yeah,
can
I mean, that's why we're for dinner. That's why we're for dinner. And, you know, but not every city in the country is a massive urban center. Most are, you know, small cities, 100,000, 50,000, and you absolutely can arm drape there and demand a seat at that early decision-making table. Get yourself on a committee. Just get yourself on a committee and begin to be that influencer who's going to make positive change.
Yeah. Let me talk about that for a minute, because, okay, so we do that. Now, you know as well as I do that the minute one of us gets on there, we are marked. They know. One of the things these guys do is their research, and they know who their enemy is. And the worst nightmare they have is one of us getting in the midst of them. And so they will, you know, we need to be prepared for what to do. I mean, you're absolutely right. We need to get on those committees. We need to be there, involved. We need to engage. But as they begin to, they'll diminish you, they'll ridicule you, you know, they'll do everything they can to silence you. And so what's your suggestion? What do we do when we get in there?
So my experience actually is they don't, when you get yourself at that table, it's because you've been appointed and it's been ratified. So actually now it's a small group. You're in a small group, and you are basically like a stakeholder. You're one of the stakeholders, essentially. Mike Shaw believes I shouldn't be calling us. We shouldn't be calling ourselves stakeholders. So
We are the only ones who really are stakeholders. That's
I know.
point.
I've changed it to be an interested party. But yeah, be an interested citizen. But when you, okay, so I believe where you're going to be bullied and marginalized is actually in the public workshops where, you know, they can tell, they usually have a facilitator and they can tell that you are not going to be a team player. You're going to be you're adversarial because you're disagreeing with the plan. And actually, if you're trained, you're really a problem child because you know actually how to counter the way that they're going to bully you and nudge you. So you're not going to allow them to do that, and so you do get marginalized and so forth. So when you get into these committees, though, and I've been there, that changes, and often the facilitator doesn't necessarily know they're there. They don't really know anyone. I mean, maybe the planner has talked to them, or the head of the development services has talked to the facilitator, but it's a pretty interesting environment. I can share what I did. I listened a lot to the language that was being used so that I could understand the players myself. Then when they used terms that I didn't believe we all shared the same definition, I asked for clarity. And the more you do that, now I'm just coming off as I'm not being belligerent. I'm not being a team player. I'm just saying, hey, you know, everyone talks about a town center. Could we go around the room and have everyone define what they mean by town center? And then it all gets out on the table. Then it's just clear where everyone's coming from. That's not being belligerent, you know, that's kind of being a team player. You're asking for clarity. And so there are, you know, your use of language, your use of questions, things like that get at the very outset, gets everything out on the table. And like I said, even when you're on a committee, it may not go the way you want it to go, but because you're on the committee, like a butterfly effect, you are forcing some sort of change because you've been appointed to that committee. So those where you're really bullied and marginalized are in those public workshops, and that requires a totally different approach.
Yeah. We're gonna do one of the upcoming webinars. We're gonna talk about how to deal with these facilitators and these facilitated meetings, and how to have some effect in there. Mm-hmm. We got about 15 minutes, and one of the things I'm looking at some of your other materials, and something I want to go into how to organize. And your number one point is every public movement needs a team, and how to build that team. We talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with you making a decision that you're going to step forward and you're going to engage in some way, right? You're going to do something. What happens when you do that is you're now out in the open, and you're out in that public square, and you've made a statement of one way or the other, you know, whether it's a printed statement, you've worn a shirt, a badge, you've put a sign on your lawn, you know, you've made a statement, you've gotten up in front of the podium, you've written a letter to the editor, whatever it is that you've done, you've made a statement. And that's good because we want you to speak. That now is going to attract other people, and your mindset now is saying, I'm engaged. And the best advice I can give you that is going to lead to sustained activism is to network and to work with other people. Now, you can join an organization of like-minded people who are working toward a same goal. One of my Citizen Ninja rules is to build credentials. we talked about that NGO representing, 50,000 people, the Sierra Club, versus just the one individual. Sometimes just the one individual actually has a greater power than a mob. For example, if there's a contentious item on the agenda, I don't know, let's say it has to do with, I know what attracts people, a dog park issue versus the budget. I don't get it. More people will show up because of a dog park issue than the budget. But anyway, if you are show up as a group, basically you're coordinating and you're working together and you show up as a group and you all have the same opinion and you all have the same talking points, you actually are less effective than being on your own and being that individual speaker. So again, stage that discourse, figure out your approach. So networking allows you to do that, but there's caution. If you're going to network with a group or with somebody, make sure they are on the same page as you are, that they have similar training. Because I've had experiences where I made assumptions that the people I was going to battle with, we had the same approach, and then realized we didn't. And it was an exposure for me because I worked very hard to build to be credible, to be professional. And then when I was associated with someone who actually became the bully, that was not good for me. That was not good for my reputation and my deliberative process, a civil deliberative process. So it's the other important thing about networking is that this is very tiring. It's very tiring to go to meeting after meeting, paying attention all the time, especially when the meetings are further away, when they're county meetings, commissions meetings, or a county board of ed, for example. And so it's important to build that network. Even, for example, during the Common Core era, we created multiple organizations, all under Citizens for Quality Education. So it was great because when talking to the press, it was CQE from Poway, CQE from La Mesa, CQE from Carlsbad. That gives an impression of, wow, they are really organized. And then it allows you to take turns to go to the County Board of Ed and say, hi, I'm with Citizens for Quality Education. That's your credential. And from this town, we're part of a number of CQEs in the county. And, these are blah, blah, blah. These are my, my issues and my comments. And then I always say, be the other side of the story when it comes to the press. When you have a network like that, and you can say, yes, I'm one of many, that's impressive, right? That really helps. So that is just a few
That's great.
points.
That's a great idea. Yeah, absolutely. And as you're putting an organization together, and you don't need thousands, you don't need hundreds, you need dedicated people. One of the things that I ask when I'm speaking on these things is I'll ask a show of hands. How many of you like to do research? 2 or 3 hands go up and I say, you're the most important people in the room. Because first of all, you're finding the people, these are the people who are going to dig out the dirt. They're going to find the weapons that you need to fight back with. And then, as you mentioned, going to city council meetings and so forth, showing up, being there, it's drudgery to a lot of people. Enjoy it. They want to be there. And if you can find these individual jobs that people like to do and not burden them with the other stuff, then they'll stay enthusiastic. And this is how you can begin to build a team. I'm looking really at your list. You talked about the researchers, the watchers. Talk about the watchers for a second.
Well, you're absolutely right. Everyone has their own skills and talents, and if you can leverage those with the individuals, you're going to have that sustained activism that we're talking about. So, I'm trying to remember this list of watchers.
Those are the people who attend the meetings.
The people who attend the meetings, they're basically like recon people. They are going and looking, who are the players, what's the language, what is going on. They're not standing out, and then it's like they're reporting back. It's important to do that reconnoiter, to go in even before you speak ever. Go in and what is the lay of the land here? What is the territory? What is the setting? What is the language? Who are the people? What are their backgrounds? What is the issue? What's the history? All different people in your organization can play a role to help you do that. And then you've got the talkers.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got the, and I'll just go through the list here. You got the researchers, the watchers, the strategists, the agitators, the victims, the media team, and the team of activists, and the social media team. So there's media broken into two.
Yeah,
but
some people like to write.
Team.
Some people like to write. And you write it and then everyone signs their name under it, make a change. They'll, ghostwriters, for example. So you definitely have to leverage people's skills, talents, time. Yeah. And
the people who are going to stand up in the meeting and speak, the people who are going to be in the background putting the strategy together. We need John over here and we need Mary over there. Here's what we're going to do. And how we're going to handle these people. We've got this city councilman who is stuffing his pockets with everything. How do we deal with them? How do we expose them? All those kind of things. This team that pulls all this together, and each person doing the things they're best at.
Yeah, and that they say they're going to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, break it. How do you, I attended a conference once and the speaker said, how do you take down a big bull elk? Well, you become the wolf pack, and you are each wolves taking your part down. That's how you take it down. Everyone has to do a part. Yeah.
And we mentioned the victims, the people who are living in areas that are going to be affected. We're here we're primarily talking about property rights and that sort of thing, but people who are in the path of whatever these programs are going to be. And it's amazing because the whole COVID thing has brought this out into spectacular technicolor of what we've been talking about for years. It's been hiding behind the scenes, and it is now right there in front of us, so you can reach out and touch it. And so many people now are aware of how absolutely unfair it is, and questioning, is this right? Is this rational? Is this something we really need to do, or is there's some other agenda here? And that is what we need to grab hold of now, because exactly what we're seeing with the COVID situation is exactly what has been going on with sustainable development and Agenda 21 and all of that, only they've been undercover. As you mentioned before, they use this easy sounding, innocent sounding language. We're just here, we want to protect the environment. We just want to make sure that we have the right development for the future, so our communities are all livable and wonderful places to live and all that kind of stuff. That's the language they've used. Now we have seen mayors and governors become absolute dictators on what you will do. It doesn't matter what's rational. Now they say it's the science. And what we're beginning to see is these NGO organizations are coming out now saying that they're going to use what they've learned with the COVID lockdown to begin to build towards the environmental issues, bringing it together. And one of the things that they're bringing out now is that we have got to flatten the climate change curve. Does it need to get any clearer of what we're talking about here? And this is why we're saying, doing these webinars, we are in the middle of a lock, but they intend to keep going and use it, the climate change, as the excuse as to where it's all going, and the same tactics. And this is why we have got to organize and fight back now, and specifically at the local level, because it is the mayors and the governors that are the ones that are really putting all this stuff in place.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about those warm and fuzzy terms. This has, to me, never been more obvious during this period, because they basically, the powers that be, have told us what the language we have to use, like flatten the curve, you know, you're selfish if you don't wear a mask. You know, they've basically given us the script of what we're supposed to say. Now just jump back to climate, you know, climate change. They've given you the script then too, but it's so obvious now. They've even given you a costume, right? Your costume is your mask. You know, they've given you the setting, your basement, your whatever. You know, it's incredible how they manipulate, and people comply. They don't recognize that they've been given a script, a costume, the setting. They've been given a role to play in society, and they're willing to play it. And you have to just step out of that for a minute and stop playing the role that they want you to play. Yeah, you do.
Well, that's just it. And people are complying, not understanding how to fight back. And as we've been, you know, the whole purpose, what we're talking about here is the ability to stand up on the local level. It's your best ability. Being able to get, you know, right in front of a congressman and try to talk to them about any of this is, you know, well, that's just fantasy. It's not going to happen. And but if we can build these teams in our local communities, and again, let me go through this again, because I think this is the real heart of what we're talking about here, is building how to organize. Is that every public movement needs the team, that we put the team together based on people's experience, based on their interest, based on their talent. The researchers, and we'll go through in all of these things. We're going to talk about more in more detail in following webinars on how to get into these things. And all of these things are listed in our manual that we've put together on this. And but you got the researchers, the watchers, the people who go to the meetings and are watching everything that's happening and seeing what's going on there. And when you're a watcher, when you're one of those people, you will begin to understand, you will see very clearly who the NGO groups are that are pulling the strings. You'll begin to see your city councilman look over at them when they get ready to make a decision. And it's almost like a thumbs up, thumbs down kind of thing that they're running the thing with. Talk about a czar, you know, or an emperor. The strategists who then take all that information and figure out what's best to do about it. The agitators, the people who actually get up and speak about it, your best spokespersons to bring it all out, using some of the other things that you've mentioned on how to do that. The victims, the people who really are the frontline sufferers of what these policies are. Their worst nightmare is to have those people standing in front of them, because they, you know, put them away, we don't want to see those people, you know. And then dealing with the media. And I know, and we're going to do a session on this as well, dealing with the media. Everybody, I'm sure, will say, well, the media is all left wing, they don't listen to us and everything. There are still ways to deal with that, and how to promote it, how to present your case with them, and you might even expose them for you know, what they're doing, and you know, discredit them.
You have to definitely be careful with the media. You gotta pick your language really well. But look, your values don't communicate themselves. You have to be the one to communicate it. So be the other side of the story. If it's a very left-leaning and they're always going to left-leaning causes, show up and be the other side of the story.
Absolutely, and that's where the activists come in. That they are the ones out there being the crowd, being the they're always, the other side is very impressed by the numbers of crowds.
Yeah.
How many people are there? How many people showed up? And so that's very important to get, people who don't want to do anything else. They don't want to stand up and speak. They don't want to do research. They don't want to attend the meetings. Get them as a body in the crowd. Exactly. Yeah. And then, of course, the whole new thing we're dealing with social media. This is a great way to not only get your message out, but recruit other people, find other like-minded souls who agree with you. And it's also a good way to expose the other side of what they're doing. So, yeah, these are. Yeah. This is the groundwork. This is what we have to do.
Just to share a funny story, I dragged somebody down to a school board meeting once, and I won't go in. It turned into a case. I actually found a lawyer who took the case pro bono, but I dragged her down there. I said, "Come on, we need people. You need to come. All you need to do is hold a sign." And so she's like, "All right, I'll come down there." And so that's what she did. I got up to the podium and she came up with me, and we had others, and we had these signs, and then the next thing you know, somebody, and it wasn't our group, took the clip of that portion of the meeting and put it out in social media, and she started getting calls from people from across the country saying, "Tammy, I saw you, this thing went viral, and I saw you holding a sign." She has never let me forget that. She goes, "Well, be careful when Mary asks you to come hold a sign, you might show up 10,000 times in a viral video."
We call that success.
I know. Oh, so funny.
All right. Well, Mary, thank you so very much. And as again, and we've got a lot of your materials and our things. Say one more time, how can people, if they want to have you come in and do a seminar or whatever, give us some details on how that can be done.
Okay, well, you can reach me through my website, which is themarybaker.com. And the reason it's the Mary Baker, like the Ohio State, is because I'm in competition with Mary Baker Eddy on the websites, on the internet. So it's themarybaker.com. But also I'm the director of training at citizensforfreespeech.org with Patrick Wood. That's a very active space to be in right now. I know, Tom, you're involved with Patrick as well. It's a great effort. He is just, wow, he's really growing very, very fast right now. And so I know we're going to be setting up some training opportunities and some deliverables there, just like you are, Tom. So citizensforfreespeech.org to me is really the best, your best way to link up with me. But you can also get my book on Amazon, and
say the title again.
Stand Up to Power, Citizen Ninja, Stand Up to Power, and by Mary Baker. You'll just put that in there, and you'll find it. It's distributed through a bunch of different bookstores, etc. So you'll find it. But I'm happy to do a virtual training. Well, we can do it that way. It's difficult to fly right now to different places. No one wants to congregate, but training, know what you're doing to be effective and to have sustained activism, because that's what we need. We need you guys to keep going.
Absolutely. Patrick is going to be on our wrap up, our last webinar. We're going to work together to wrap that up. And that brings me up to one more point I want to make. We are recording these webinars, and that doesn't give people the opportunity to ask questions. And I kind of did that on purpose. One reason is so that we can stay on time and keep them down to an hour each. And we're pretty close. We're doing that pretty well. But we know people have questions. But first of all, I thought, hopefully, as we go through these 9 webinars we're going to do, we're going to answer your questions. But if we, people will still have questions, I'm sure, and I'm sure there are ones that we really need to answer. And so with that last session with Patrick, we're going to take all the questions that we get and we try to answer as many as we can. I thought he was one of the best people to help do that. And so we put on screen how to send a question to us so we get it, and we'll do our very best to answer those questions. But we thought this was the best way to handle this to keep things rolling. And so Mary, I thank you so much for all of your help in here and helping to lead people in the right direction. And these building blocks we'll get into much more as we go through the next several webinars, right down to how to run for office, the sample legislation that will be available, and even some legal activity that can be taken step by step. That's what we're going to do. And so this is the conclusion of our third webinar. And I want to give you some, folks, stay tuned here for a second, and we'll show you details on how to get the manual, the workbook that we've put together, and the toolkit that we have created that have new information as it comes along, new tactics that aren't in the manual, and research papers and things like that. All of that can be available to you. So stay tuned, we'll watch that. Thank you so much, Mary. We deeply appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom.
Hi, this is Tom DeWeese from the American Policy Center. And I want to tell you about the full program that we are putting together as we put these webinars together. The webinars are the first part of what we are working on to help local activists become citizen ninjas, become powerful to fight on the local level, to stand up to things and these policies and your city councils and your county commissions, and effectively push back on the things that they're putting together. And we're putting together the series of webinars. And one of the things you can do with these webinars is keep them. They'll be available on our website at americanpolicy.org. You can share them with others. You can watch them over and over again. You can use them as programs for organizations that you're already part of and begin a training process there. We've got to get a cadre of trained activists to stand up to the forces that we are up against. What we're facing, you can see by watching your television every night now, what we are up against an opposition that is highly trained to absolutely destroy the Republic of the United States of America, your property rights, your ability to live your life as you choose. And what we are doing here is working to counter that effort that they are putting together, and begin to restore our liberties. And again, the webinars are the first part of that. And the second thing that we've done is we've put together this activist handbook to how to fight back on the local level. In fact, the webinars are basically designed to bring this to life. Let me just share with you some of the things that are in this manual. I don't think anybody has ever put together a more comprehensive tool for you to use in these cases. First of all, we've got a great deal of information in here about the real enemy that you're facing. The Green New Deal, the Agenda 21, sustainable development policies that are taking over every single community. And I know if you've been an activist, you've gone to try to talk to your city councilman and so forth, and they'll tell you, never heard of it, don't know what that is, tell me something about it, whatever. Well, we've got all the details here of why it's bad news. And one of the things we're focusing on in the manual is how to take the offensive for liberty, and how to create your community as a freedom pod, where you are in your community alone. You are fighting back to restore and protect private property, free enterprise, and your personal freedom of choice. Those are the American pillars of freedom that we've all enjoyed through the history of the United States that are now under attack. We're teaching you how to fight back with those things. Particularly, we're focusing on the local governments. Everybody wants to get involved in the presidential campaigns and work on with Congress or whatever, but we believe that the most effective thing you can do to fight back is start on the local level, and it will grow up to the state legislature and then on into Congress and so forth. But it rarely works the other way, and we focus on that in the manual. We're going to talk about some of the organizations, the NGO organizations that are in your communities and how they operate. The National Association of Realtors, and how they have absolutely betrayed the whole issue of property rights, which they ought to be the leading advocate for. The American Planning Association, and how they've taken over every single community in this country and putting in plans. They say free enterprise doesn't work, so they have to have their planning. That should give you a real hint as to what their planning is really about, but they call it smart growth. They're destroying private property ownership, and so forth. We're going to talk about how to take legislative action. And we have put together a package of 5 bills that are all designed to cut back on the size, cost, growth, reach of government that is particularly on private property rights. And we're going to teach you and legislators how to use these bills in legislators and start a movement across the country. We're going to go into great detail about that. Taking the offense to restore our liberty is what this is all about, and how to become a citizen ninja. We've got 8 rules for successful activists to follow, what those are, how to organize, how to research. We've got in here a city survey. If you take this document and fill it out, a city survey on your community, and you will find what kind of programs you have there, who's involved, what they are. Once you get this whole document filled out, you'll know everything you need to know about your city and how to begin to fight back. It's a very, very valuable tool, and it's in the manual. How to write effective letters to the editor, and how to use the media, not just newspapers and television and radio, but also social media, and how we need to use those things and organize and get your message out. We have some tools in here that are extremely effective, and a lot of them are used to call out your elected officials. Do they stand for free enterprise, private property, and limited government, or are they promoting these massive government programs? We have some resolutions asking them to sign, whether they do or not, and if they don't sign, you've got your answer. We've got a pledge for elected officials and candidates to sign. Guys running for office, and he says, "Oh yeah, I'm with you." Well, here's a resolution for him, a pledge for him to sign, saying that he supports private property rights. Now, if he signs it, wonderful. And if he starts to betray that when he gets into office, you've got that document in hand to say, "Hey, what are you doing here? This is what you said you believed in when we elected you." These kind of things. We've got a whole lot of handouts that you can produce and hand out to people on various issues, conservation easements and other attacks on private property. And wherever it fits your need, we can have that there. And we have a section in the manual talking about how to take back the elective process, how to get it into your precinct organization. And, if you organized your own precinct, you could become a very powerful person in your community. Elected officials or candidates would come to you, say, "Help me." And you could say, "Where do you stand? What do you stand for?" That'll determine whether I help you or not. This is in the manual. One of the big things that I've been working on for the last year and a half is a means to make elected officials personally responsible for their own actions. How do you do that? There are some legal actions that can be taken. We now have a couple of them that one of them has to deal with the 14th Amendment. One of them has to deal with the Section 1983 of the Civil Rights Act. We're going to have webinars on this, and we're going to teach you, and it's in the manual as well, how to deal with these things. And then we have just a whole lot of documents. Do you know what the Wildlands Project is? We've got a document in here that'll tell you what it is. It's how they're taking rural land. Do you know what complete streets are? We've got a document in here that'll tell you what that is. And international building codes, controls on urban growth, the AFFH bill from HUD, Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, which, by the way, the Trump administration has now said they're going to take away, but the National Association of Realtors says, well, we'll pick up the ball and take that instead. That, again, shows you their betrayal. National heritage areas and so forth. All of these are documents and much, much more in this manual that we have now put together, and it's all available for you on, I'll tell you what, the manual itself now is ready on Amazon and on our website at americanpolicy.org, and it is $49.99 to just buy it outright. However, a lot of these programs, a lot of these documents, a lot of the research documents that are just too big to put into this document, we now have those. We have on our website called a toolkit, and that toolkit has a lot of these documents. It has also where in the manual we do have some of these handouts that you can use, but it's kind of hard to get them out of the book, so you can download them from the website. And all of these kinds of documents and more, we're getting ready to put together some another section on the website where we can document the activists in different communities and actions they've taken successfully or not, sample legislation, all that sort of thing. And by the way, in here we have a kit of 5 bills that have been presented to us, provided for us by state legislator Matt Shea in Washington State, that all focus on limiting government and protecting private property. And those are downloadable on the toolkit on the website. So it's all in there together. And what we're asking with all of these details, you know, about a year or 2 years ago, I put out a 5-point action plan of how to restore all this. The webinars are the first part of that action plan. The website is another part that, as we're putting it together, and as that is being developed. And we're working on, and again, putting these media sources together, as I mentioned, the radio shows, things like that. Those are all part of that action plan. Well, you know, it takes some funds to put all these things together. So what we're asking is, you can get the manual for just $49.99 on Amazon, or for a donation of at least $100, you can have access to everything, the manual itself and the toolkit, and all the updates that we give as they come along, and lots and lots of other information that will be coming down the pike as we do that. You will be part of the team. Just a donation, a one-time donation of $100, and you'll have access to all of that. So our goal is to restore the Republic of the United States of America and all the freedoms that we were guaranteed to be protected in our Constitution. That is our goal. We are up against a massive force, as you know, but we can beat them. And they are terrified that you're going to learn the information that we're providing here. And the last thing they want is for you to know this information. So get the information, become a powerful citizen ninja in your own community, how to organize, how to fight back, all the details, everything you need, all of it comes together. If you can see your way to give us a donation of at least $100 one time, then you will have access to all of it. So I hope you'll do that. I hope you'll join us, and let's take America back. Thank you.